It's Thursday, the 28th of July, 2022. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 big stories to rip through this morning in just 5 minutes. We better jump into it. Story number 1, inflation jumped by 6.1% in the 12 months to the end of June as rising fuel prices and home building costs really ate into household budgets.
It was the biggest annual rise since the introduction of the GST back in 2000 and followed on from a 5.1% pace the month before. The number's very high, but not as high as some economists had expected. It's still well below the pace of inflation in other economies like the US, New Zealand and the UK. But it was very broad-based. About 2/3 of categories reported higher prices. Now, the underlying inflation, which takes out volatile items and is preferred by the Reserve Bank, was 4.9%. for the year to the end of June, up sharply from 3.7% the month earlier. That underlying rate was its highest reading since 1991. So, what's all that mean? Well, market economists seem to think that inflation will keep climbing even higher, but it should peak some point in the next 6 months. There are signs that supply chain issues are being sorted. Freight costs, for example, are falling. Oil prices have come down. The disruption to fresh food from the East Coast floods, hopefully, is over. What's it mean for interest rates? Well, the Reserve Bank Board meets next Tuesday. The majority of economists expect it will lift the official cash rate by another 50 basis points. That would be 4 in a row. There's a decent chance it could go 75 basis points. And if you look at financial markets, they suggest there's plenty more rate rises coming.
All right, on to story number 2. It was great, Sean, to see Parliament back in action yesterday. Got question time, the argy-bargy, new legislation, and more focus really on the Greens than any time over the past 9 years because, of course, they hold the balance of power in the Senate.
Yes, that's true. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, yesterday was forced to defend the scrapping of the Australian Building and Construction Commission. That was probably the main talking point from question time. Opposition Leader Peter Dutton pressed the Prime Minister on Labor's promise to cut power bills by $275 a year. That got a good run. One thing about this Parliament, Michael, we'll see more questions from independents, which means potentially more policy issues raised during question time. For example, yesterday, independent Andrew Wilkie asked about the indexation of HECS causing a spike in debt for university graduates. I don't reckon that would have gotten a run otherwise.
No, I reckon you might be right there. Story number 3, Sean, a really interesting update from Westpac. The bank says it's close to offering 10-minute mortgage approvals.
Yes, helping those people out there who want to buy a house on an impulse. Anyway, Westpac has completed the digitisation of its mortgage approval process, and some customers will receive unconditional offers within 10 minutes by the end of the year. ANZ is on track for that too, though the other two, Commonwealth Bank and National Australia Bank, still have a way to go. A few things out of that Westpac meeting yesterday. It's looking at reducing some of its branches of its other brands, so it will co-locate branches. So Bank SA, St George, Bank of Melbourne, BT and Rams may move into Westpac branches. The other thing is Westpac's decided to reduce its exposure to oil and gas as well as power companies. It's a real dilemma for the banks. They make money funding these big projects, but they also claim to be environmentally responsible. CEO Peter King said the bank will balance energy security against its stricter lending standards for oil and gas.
All right, story number 4, Sean, there is something unusual going on in the buy now, pay later world with Sezzle's share price doubling yesterday, and that triggered a trading halt.
Yeah, very, very unusual. So Sezzle was dumped at the altar by Zipco a couple of weeks ago, and in the past 5 days is up 213%. On opening yesterday, it fell slightly to 35 cents a share. It finished at 70 cents a share 5 hours later. Well, it didn't finish. It was 70 cents a share 5 hours later, and a trading halt was called. No news, just lots of action. The whole sector's doing well. Zipco jumped another 19% yesterday. It's just really unusual.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, final story. Story number 5, Sean. There's been a bunch of earnings results out from around the globe in the past 48 hours. And while the global economy is softening, it isn't a disaster.
That's right. Microsoft missed earnings expectations as a strong US dollar and a slowdown in PC sales hurt. Its cloud business also disappointed, but it's confident about the future. Google parent Alphabet said ad sales growth had slowed markedly, but it wasn't as bad as Twitter and Snap reported last week. Visa's profit jumped because people are travelling more. Makes sense. General Motors disappointed as it battled with supply chain disruptions. But I reckon the most interesting ones are the fast-moving consumer goods. Coca-Cola and McDonald's both came out. They said costs were rising, but they were able to push up prices and people were paying. Same story out of Unilever, which is based in Britain. It said the same thing. Costs are up, but it can push through higher prices. Really interesting action.
There we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 28th of July, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough for you, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. And don't forget, every Thursday you can get Safe Word by Fear and Greed, our lighter look at the world of business, the world of the office, and the world of work more broadly. That is out wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.